Hello, welcome to the Grace Academy. My name is Natalie Franks, and I am the Executive Director of Programs and Development for the Grace Alliance. And I'm so excited and grateful that you are tuning in with me today to learn a little bit about communication. Now, at this point, you've probably heard from Joe Padilla, from Casey Pruitt, even myself, discussing the various aspects that are involved in leading our support groups. And this is one of my favorite portions of the training, communication. It's all about you. It's empowering you to be able to handle those difficult situations that come up within a group setting, to know how to efficiently, effectively respond, feeling confident as a facilitator. And so through this training, this is interactive. There's going to be slides titled Your Response. I'm going to be reading a real life example that's happened in one of our support groups. Pause the video here. Take this as an opportunity to write down on your PDF training manual your response. How would you efficiently, effectively respond to this individual just as if you were in a real life group situation? Now you're probably wondering, well, gosh, I don't know how I would respond. We're going to get to those details, providing you with a wonderful tool that we use here at the Grace Alliance. We believe it instills hope. It instills God's grace through the process, and something that we encourage you to use as you facilitate these groups. As facilitators, we want to have good communication skills, especially when we're handling people's experiences, their emotions. And the tool listed on this slide is simple. It's effective. And I want you to say with me, validate, affirm, reconcile. Okay, your turn. Say that with me. Validate, affirm, and reconcile. I want to help break this down because this is the tool that you will be using during your group session. Validation is the ability to hear the emotions that the person is trying to convey. So it's not only hearing them, but it's repeating or reflecting those emotions back to them. So basically, our natural instinct is to fix somebody. Our natural instinct is to kind of listen to what they're saying, but we typically respond with, well, I think you should do this or do that. I think, based off of my personal experience. And the focus then becomes back on you. So in this situation, our response would sound something like, gosh, I can see that this is really challenging for you. I can hear that you're frustrated. These statements, again, are not focusing on you. They're not about what we think. They're reflecting what the person is trying to say to you. So that's validation. Now we move on to affirmation, to affirm. Now this is recognizing and verbalizing the strength and qualities that you see in the person talking. So you're looking for things in their statement, in their character, things in their actions to affirm. So you may be wondering, well, gosh, what does this sound like? It could be as simple as, I appreciate you being so honest and so brave to share an experience like that with us. I can see how resilient you are and you don't give up. That's an amazing quality. So that's a sample statement of affirming someone. You're affirming their bravery, their honesty, their resilience, their ability to share. You're finding those positive attributes, characteristics about that person, and you're telling them. And you can imagine that people don't often hear the statements validating their experiences. They don't often hear statements affirming their character, especially when in the context of church, in the context of mental illness. It's usually, you need to do more. This is what you're doing wrong. And so throughout this group, we want to not revert back to our fix-it mentality or what we think is best, but we want people to feel heard. We want people to feel affirmed. And finally, we want to bring these heavy statements that are said back to the curriculum a statement of reconciliation. So this is reaffirming the community that's present. This is restoring harmony to the group. So a sample of this one, this is a lot more challenging, figuring out how, to not jump back into pain, but to bring the group back to a place of harmony so that you can continue through the curriculum. So a sample statement would be, this is exactly why we're here together as a group, to walk through this journey, to learn new tools, and to grow in resting in God's grace. And when you're responding in a real life situation, you would want to combine all three of them into one statement. But I want to provide you with one example statement. I can see that this is really challenging. I can hear the frustration in your voice, and I appreciate you being so honest and brave to share this experience with us today. You are so brave, and this is exactly why we're here as a group, to walk through this journey together, learning new tools together, and growing in that process of resting in God's grace. And so with that, let's jump back into the curriculum and learn some of those tools that we can use throughout the week, that the Lord can use to guide us through this process. And so that was a sample statement of combining the validate, the affirm, and the reconcile together. And now I encourage you to pause the video at any time. Don't be afraid to pause it and write down some of these sample statements so that you can begin to learn. So before we jump into practicing, there are a few quick tips that are very important as we begin, to lead these groups, to respond to these challenging statements. And I'm sure you may not even know this, but I'm sure you have used the word but when talking to someone. So you may be wondering, well, here's an example of how it plays a part in this communication tool. So you have, a friend that you're talking to, you maybe a sibling. Well, you say this, you've grown so much in your ability to cope with stress, but you need to try a bit harder to respond to me with a positive attitude. So I have this affirmation, you've grown so much in your ability to cope with stress. And the minute that I add the word but in is the minute that I'm discounting that affirmation. I jump right into critique and how to fix it. You need to try harder to respond to me with a positive attitude. So when we're doing this communication tool, don't be discouraged if your natural instinct is to occasionally add in but. That's okay. It takes time. It takes practice to learn this tool. Also, in this process of facilitating and communicating, we want to avoid discounting, reasoning with anybody, especially when it comes to theological reasoning. People might have different backgrounds, different perspectives and experiences. We definitely want to avoid arguing or ignoring people. You may have a talker in your group, one that is constantly dominating the conversation, and you don't want to specifically ignore them when you're calling on people to answer questions. And when we get into this, if you do discount, if you reason, if you argue with someone, this is easily telling them that their experience, their beliefs are not real. And you can imagine how this would even become a trigger for them. So there's the foundation, the building blocks, the stepping stones to get you to growing in your communication skills, learning how to jump in as a facilitator, and really be able to effectively, efficiently communicate grace, communicate hope, validate experiences, affirm strengths, and draw and restore the harmony of the groups. Here is our first slide, your response. I'm going to read the example that we have, and this was a real life example that happened in a Living Grace group. I'm going to walk you through this example step by step. So make sure you have that training manual in hand to write down your notes, and don't forget to pause the video to give yourself time to write down your answer. Imagine yourself sitting in the group and a group member states, I have bipolar disorder and struggle with a lot of anxiety. I was having a panic attack at church and had one of the pastors pray for me. It was intense spiritual warfare against the demonic forces. After he finished praying, all my anxiety and panic was gone. I know that my condition is a spiritual issue. So in most cases, this statement would be that elephant in the room. People don't know how to respond. They want to avoid this. So they're going to say, well, thank you for sharing. Does anyone else have a thought? And they completely pass over this. This individual has this heightened emotional experience, and most people will just go right past it. We don't want that to happen. This is when we turn to our validate, our affirm, and our reconcile. So let's walk through this step by step. So validate. On your paper, I want you to write some things down that we can validate about this person's experience. Remember, we want to look for the emotions that we hear, the emotions that we feel. So take some time, pause your video, and write down on paper some of those things that you can validate, the things you hear, the things that you feel. Now that you've written down your validation, the things that you hear, the things that you feel, let's jump on into affirm. So what are the strengths that we can identify here? And you may be wondering, well, gosh, I don't know. I don't know if this is a positive or a negative experience, or maybe I disagree with what they're saying, but maybe I agree with it. We want to look for positive attributes about their action. Maybe things that they did that were really beneficial that you can affirm. Positive characteristics in their personality. Look for the slightest things that you can affirm and encourage in this individual. So take some time here, pause your video, and write down those things that you can affirm. And finally, reconciliation, the hardest part. What are short statements that we can make to restore harmony to the group? Most likely, people are looking at you, waiting to hear for your response, and you're sitting there, gosh, I don't know how to bring this all full circle. I don't know how to move on without feeling like this person wasn't heard. So this is a tough one. We want to draw the focus of this group back to the materials. How can we do that? And one important thing here is that this is not a place to get into a deep theological debate as to what's correct or incorrect theology. If we lean toward that type of discussion, we really enter into a place of discounting an individual's faith experience. So you may have those statements, you may have those questions that may bring up the desire to correct theology, but we don't want to discount that individual's faith experience. So with that, take some time, pause your video, and write down how you could reconcile this. What's a statement that you can make to restore the harmony back to the group? And now that we have all of those down, you have your affirm, your validate, your reconcile, and they may not be statement yet. That's okay. If you don't have a statement, that's just a-okay. It's learning how to pick out the pieces of their situation, of their story, of their statement, and learn how to piece those together to make one cohesive response. And this is the first of many examples, and so don't be discouraged if this is really challenging for you. In the next slide, we're going to be talking about the sample response. So I'm going to give you a sample response to this statement. So let's get right into the validate, affirm, and reconcile for the sample response. If you're feeling overwhelmed, do not fear. This takes so much time, even for myself leading trainings and facilitating groups. It's been a lot of practice getting this to flow. And sometimes I say the affirm before the validate and I forget the reconciliation statement, and that's okay. This is just a sample foundation for you to use, and you don't have to have perfection here. So make sure to give yourself grace through the process as well. So for a validate, the sample statement is, I am so sorry. That sounds like it was a very intense and scary experience for you. So you're recognizing that having a panic attack at church is frightening. It's scary for them. So you're validating those emotions. Now, for our affirmation, I want you to know that it shows so much courage for you to seek out help from the church and from the leaders. So you're taking that step to really seek help. That is something to affirm. Affirming someone for reaching out. That's a positive attribute, a positive characteristic that you can affirm in that individual. Now, for our reconciliation, this is the tough one because in the previous example, they got into a little bit of a touchy theological discussion whether or not prayer was the only tool, whether it was only a spiritual battle. And that is a door that many people will walk through and try to debate. So this is a great opportunity for you to restore the harmony back to the group. And you can say a reconciliation statement like, what's great? Prayer is one of the many tools that we have to help us during challenging times that we face. We're in this journey together, and let's see what other great tools the curriculum has to offer to us today. So this statement is key because you're highlighting that prayer is an amazing tool. So you're not discounting what they said, but you're gently stating that prayer is not the only tool. It gives us one of many. And if we draw back to the curriculum, you'll be able to easily learn more of those tools. It's an easy way to restore the harmony of the meeting. Don't be afraid to use that curriculum as a way to bring reconciliation to the situation. So that was the first one. Take a deep breath. You survived. We have a few more. And in this next your response situation, I'm going to read the example and I'm going to pause. And I want you to take some time and try to write down a sample statement for affirm, for validate, reconcile. So let's get on in this. Let's read this sample. This specifically comes from the family grace group, from a family member. We're so discouraged and feel absolutely hopeless. It's been 20 years and we don't feel like our son or daughter will ever get better. Why has God allowed us to go through this painful trial? And why has He never helped us? Gosh, the weight that you feel when you read something like this, and that nervousness of, gosh, how do I respond to this individual without making them feel worse? I don't know what to say. And so this is where we depend on the validate, affirm, and reconcile to really help you bring hope and healing. Take some time, write down your validate, your affirm, and your reconcile, remembering to pick out those emotions, actively listen to what they're saying, affirm their strengths, affirm who they are, their character, and then bring in that restoration, restoring the community, restoring the harmony of the group. Okay, so hopefully you're starting to get a hang of this. Each and every example has its own challenges. Our first example brought up potential for theological debate, and this example becomes particularly challenging because the individual is looking for an answer. They want to be put into that fix-it mode, and they want the members to fix them. So it's going to be, challenging for us to not allow the discussion of the group to get on that tangent of people telling them, well, I think you should do this, and I think you should do that. We can easily have 45 minutes go by quickly and not even discuss the curriculum. So that's why the validate, affirm, and reconcile is so key. So the validate, again, is looking for those emotions. So a sample statement would be, I can hear the frustration and the exhaustion in your voice. Now, looking at the affirmation, it takes so much courage to share and thank you for being so open with us. You display such perseverance. And finally, to reconcile the situation, I want you to know that you're not alone in this journey. This group is here to learn and to grow alongside with you. So that would be that statement that you would make in response to that heavy discussion that was brought up. And I know that this is easier said than done. It's much easier to slowly break down the validate, affirm, and reconcile. And we're maybe sitting there thinking, well, gosh, I'm not sure if I could really do this in person. But give yourself that grace. With time, it will become much more natural. So we have another example specifically coming from the Living Grace group. Every day, my anxiety is horrible. I try to experience God, but I never feel close to Him or feel like He loves me. I know I'm supposed to be thankful, but I don't want to pretend and lie to myself and to God. I'm doing everything I know, but nothing is working. What am I supposed to do? You can feel the weight here. That individual looking for an answer, looking for that fix-it response. So how would you respond? Now, I encourage you, if you are in a group setting, by all means, take these examples and role play. Have one individual state this example and then another one respond with the validate, affirm, and reconcile. You can continue doing this as an individual, writing down those responses, but let's take this time together, pause our video, and write down our validate, affirm, and reconcile. And try to do it this time without pausing between each and every step. See if you can write down one cohesive response, practicing just as if you were sitting in that group situation with this individual. Okay, let's get into our sample response here, and hopefully you can gain a deeper understanding of this amazing tool. And so what do we have for our validate? I can see in your voice that this is such a difficult experience that you are going through. And I admire that even through this frustration, you are brave and honest to share your experience with us. And we are all in this journey of learning, growing, and searching together. Through continuing to explore this curriculum together, we will be learning how to rest in God's grace. So there we have it, our validate, our affirm, and our reconcile. As you can see, we're keeping each and every response simple. We're validating the emotions, we're affirming those positive characteristics, and we're landing in hope. One thing that I think is really important to keep in mind as you continue to practice these statements is as we continue to talk and talk and talk, we somehow find our way back into pain and back into hurt. We go in circles. So when we keep our statements short, we're able to land in hope without making a trail right back into that hurt. We want the focus to be on the process. Remember that recovery process that we talked about? And we want to reinforce that we have to rest in God's grace, His unending love, reinforcing that rest, because that is a statement, that's an idea that is not communicated enough today. We hear works, we hear we need to do more, pray more. Well, we as an organization want to make sure that we communicate resting in God's unending love and grace. Due to the nature of these groups, distress is inevitable. Knowing about the potential for distress in those situations will help you lead well. And as you learn in video number 3, grief is a process, and it's a healthy process. And we want to allow our group members to experience that process. So if there's grief that happens within your group, allow that grief to happen. Allow that individual to share their thoughts. And even if they need to cry, let them cry. You know, some groups are very uncomfortable with pain and they end up trying to avoid it by saying, "Oh, so sorry, let's pray for you right now." They cut off the grieving process because they're uncomfortable. So avoid doing that as a facilitator. Let grief happen. And after they express those feelings, go through the same communication tool. Obviously, what they're conveying is heavy. So validate their emotions, affirm their characteristics, and bring that harmony back to the group by providing that reconciliation statement. And after you walk through this process and allow that grief to be expressed, You then offer ministry and a comforting prayer. And I say offer because oftentimes it's imposed on individuals. So we want to offer this. We want to ask, can I pray for you? And if you think back to those initial brain slides of individuals in that hyperactive, overactive brain, you can imagine that if 15 people crowded around them, all laid hands on them, it would be very overwhelming. It would be overwhelming if they began to pray a breakthrough prayer. So we want to keep it simple. We don't want to hover around them. We don't want to physically contain them, making them feel trapped. We want to give them space as we offer this type of ministry. And it can be as simple as your group members just remaining seated and extending that hand as you say and pray a simple prayer. Now, if the emotions are extremely heightened, your co-facilitator can take that individual outside and continue this comforting process so that the other facilitator can continue to lead that group. In an extremely heightened emotional situation, that involves anger and frustration, that can easily take over the entire group, which we don't want to happen. So don't be afraid to use that co-facilitator to help support you as you lead this group, bringing that individual outside to go through the comforting, offering ministry and comforting prayer. And afterwards, after an emotionally heightened situation within the group, you want to bring safety and closure to the situation. So there are many more notes on this in your leader's guide, which I really encourage you to look through. In that moment, you want to state what you noticed, observed, maybe even happened. You want to bring to light and not ignore what happened in the group, but then you want to go through the validating, affirming, and reconciliation process. And this is not an opportunity to open that can of worms or to jump into that role acting like a therapist, but you want to bring closure to any situation that comes about so that you can move safely forward as a group. And again, jump back into that leader's guide to get more information on how this is done well. You will also encounter individuals who have horrible anxiety, maybe even struggle with panic attacks. This is not uncommon. We first want to communicate safety. We want to communicate calm. And as you remain calm, you'll start to notice that your group members will also remain calm. And if this individual, is having a panic attack, make sure to communicate that it's okay. They do not have to feel embarrassed or ashamed for what they are going through. We want to give them permission. We want to communicate that it's okay if they need to remove themselves for a few minutes to go outside and get fresh air. They have the ability to come and go as they need. And some people who have a lot of anxiety may get worked up. They may need to just remove themselves for a short period of time to do a deep breathing exercise and reiterate that that is okay. Thirdly, don't be afraid to use your co-facilitator for support. If an individual is having that challenging time, like I said on the last slide, the co-facilitator can go out and check on them. If the individual is in the midst of a panic attack, use grounding techniques. And I encourage you to read up online for more grounding techniques. But an example of them would be a breathing technique. Sitting down, reorienting to the room, you can gently say, hey, let's do some breathing together. Let's breathe in for 4 seconds. Let's hold for 4 seconds. And slowly let that breath out for 4 seconds. You're bringing their attention, you're reorienting them, you're guiding them through, bringing their central nervous system down to a calming level. And during this time of distress, it's very easy for the focus of the group to be centered on this person. Your group members are loving, they're caring, they want to jump in and help. And this heightened situation can really take away your group time. So again, don't be afraid to use that co-facilitator to keep the focus on the group, the curriculum, while the other one cares for the individual, supports the individual, maybe outside in a different room of your church if you're having it there. So don't be afraid to keep the focus on the group. And lastly, suicidal ideation is a strong possibility within these groups, just due to the nature of mental illness. And it's a heavy topic. It's one that we don't like to think about. But I encourage each and every one of you to access the many resources that are available throughout the internet, provided, by different organizations. There are so many tools that can walk you through how to help someone with suicidal ideation. As just a brief overview for you today, if you hear about suicidal ideation within your group, the first step is to listen. Listen to their thoughts, their needs. Many times they just need someone to hear them out. They just need someone to listen to what they're going through. And secondly, don't be afraid to ask. Years ago, we believed that asking would increase the likelihood of an individual following through with that plan, and that was proved incorrect. So please, if they have a plan set in place, don't be afraid to ask. Ask if you can help remove any means. Ask if you can get them help. If the situation seems extremely concerning, stay with them. And if they refuse your care, and they leave, and you believe that they're in that serious danger, that serious situation, do not hesitate to call your local crisis intervention team. You can call that local law enforcement, individuals who are trained to handle the topic of mental illness. And finally, we want you to follow your church protocol for these situations. So check with your care department, your care team, to see if they have any specific directions for you to follow, especially if you're leading this group on their church campus. And lastly, here is the suicide support line, and find your local crisis intervention team as well. And finally, conflict. Conflict is extremely rare, but it's better to be prepared and have a plan in hand before you begin your groups. And you may have an individual who is causing a lot of problems within the group. It's impacting the flow of the group. And if this is the case, you want to talk to the person outside of the group, maybe at a separate time or after a group meeting, and ask for understanding. Sometimes there might be something that's going on within their life outside of the group that they didn't even know was beginning to impact their presence in the group. And you can say something as simple as, "Hey, John, I've noticed that you were really worked up during the group the past few weeks, and it's starting to impact the group and others. And I know your character, and I wanted to make sure and really see if there's anything else that's going on in your life that might be leading to these situations within the group." And you will probably hear things like, "I just lost my job. I'm stressed about finances." And your initial conversation may solve the problem. It may bring that level of awareness where that individual begins to recognize how they're acting in the group. Many people may not even recognize that they're worked up and venting heavily. And if the individual is not doing well, you can guide the individual to find other ways to share. So sometimes the only place that they have is that Living Grace group. So you can point them maybe to a professional therapist or another group that's specific to the outside problem. Now, there may be instances where that individual continues to be disruptive to the group, and you start to see that the group becomes a little bit too triggering to that individual. And it's okay to cancel their group participation with hope. We like to call it cancel with hope, because this is not abandonment. Rather, it's for their benefit to get the right help at the right time before they jump back into the group. And you can encourage them that by getting this correct hope, this correct care, participating in the group at a different time will make it much more beneficial, a better experience for them and for the other group participants. And you can always seek assistance from your church, determining if they have a conflict resolution protocol. So don't be afraid, again, to ask for understanding. Guide them to new ways of sharing. You can cancel with hope encouraging them that this is not the end, but that you want them to receive the right care before jumping right back into the group, and follow that church protocol. Don't be afraid to seek that input from your church leadership if this is an extremely complicated conflict situation. And if you have any questions, I again encourage you to look back at the Leader's Guide for more information. There's more examples, tips, and tools that are listed there. It's a wonderful thing to have on hand as you prepare to start your group. And as an organization, we value providing you with experience. We are constantly sending out newsletters with tips, tools, updates as an organization. So make sure to sign up for our emails. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And we also value providing you with opportunities to engage. So make sure you check out our website for more information regarding our Grace Live, which is free topical webinars that will be featuring staff as well as guest presenters. We also have our free Thrive online course, which includes an hour webinar walking you through the different topics that are covered in our Thrive book each week. And we are grateful for you. We would love to keep in touch. If you are planning on starting a group in your area, make sure you fill out that page on our website for our Grace Group facilitators. We want to get your information where you will be hosting the group. Then we can have that ability to list you on our website, providing individuals with easy access to join your group. And people are looking daily for new Grace groups to attend. And we pray that one day individuals would have easy access to a support group. As always, if you have any questions about this training, other questions in general, feel free to reach out to us via email at the email address listed on the slide. We will get back to you at our earliest convenience. And again, I am grateful for each and every one of you. Blessings to you all as you begin the process of starting your support groups. And I hope you have a wonderful day.